Hello and welcome back to OmniFoot TV. This is your host Omar speaking, and today the red file has been closed. We'll be opening it up again soon to talk about something equally as thrilling as the Superga air disaster. However, today's topic at hand is Juventus. Honestly, I think there are a lot of points to cover in this episode, mainly because of how badly Juve's decline has just struck everyone altogether as of yesterday, because as of their loss against Milan last night, they'll be playing Europa League football next season. And for anyone who didn't see this coming, I say you're naive, whoever you are, be it the president of the club, as I would assume, or just a regular fan. Juve really brought this upon themselves. And they did it in the most hilarious way possible. A proper decline hidden behind PR and a team of players whose names look good on a sheet. That's all. That is literally it. I've always taken a very intense liking to Juventus. They've always had my heart in certain ways as a football fan. I fell in love with Italian football because of Juve, because of players like Del Piero, because of players like Camoranesi, Trezeguet, Cannavaro, Buffon, obviously, who's still going to this day. It's just odd, and it's a shame to see the club decline this particular way. I mean, obviously, for them to decline, that was going to happen sooner or later. They've won 9 titles in a row, if not 10. I think they've won 10 titles. I'm not even sure. I can't remember how many titles they've won. I know Bayern won 9 Bundesligas in a row as of yesterday. But Juve have literally been winning it for so long, I've literally forgotten the number of titles they've won. That goes to prove just how bored I am of it. And this is of no offense to any Juventini watching. It's just Serie A reached a point where after Juve started winning everything every year, they won the Coppa Italia, I think, twice or 3 times in a row. And for the longest time, they had no competition in the league. I mean, if you as a fan don't get bored of that at one point or another, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, dominance is good for football at for a certain period of time. I mean, I'd say United winning the Premier League 3 times in a row, that was good. They still had competition, but it was okay for them to do that. They had a team that warranted it. And I'm not saying Juve didn't have one that warranted it, but after a certain amount of wins, you start asking yourself, okay, am I winning because I'm that good or because everyone else is just that damn bad? And I think that's the question that most people watching European football the past couple of seasons have been asking. Although this season has perhaps been the weirdest season of the 21st century. Seeing Juventus win the title last season and then fall so badly this season, watching Inter clinch it after Milan have been leading for most of the season, most of the season, they led from the first half of the season, and then they started to dip in form. No one saw this coming. I don't think anyone saw this coming. Saw the season coming as a whole. Its outlook. It's just the table. Just look at the Serie A table. You'll get what I mean. For the longest time, we were used to Juve just constantly winning. And it's all been one panic-influenced decision after another. Look at Agnelli hiring Pirlo, who didn't even get his coaching badges. He hadn't even gotten his badges until a day before the season. Who does that? Who the hell does that? Like, I know I'm kind of I'm being quite animated at the moment, but seriously, if you are a manager and you're walking in to have your final exam done a day before the league season begins, you don't have your badges, you're not a licensed manager yet, and you already have the Juventus job, one of the biggest jobs in Italy, Europe, and the world. What kind of slap in the face is that to upcoming managers, to people who are working their tails off to reach that level? What does that say about football in Europe nowadays? When you see former players getting jobs, it's at such big clubs just because they played there. I mean, to me, it's nothing more than a PR stunt. And just like last season, as Sarri was quite the dividing figure. Ever since he left Napoli, he was a dividing figure at Napoli as well, but he was more so loved at Napoli. People didn't disagree about him as often. They loved him a lot, but they disagreed about how far he took his players. Because the man was extremely stubborn, let me tell you. I saw him manage Chelsea for a season, I couldn't stand it. Couldn't stand the fact that he was so predictable. And when he went to Juventus, I don't know if people necessarily expected him to win the league, but he did. And let's be fair to the man. He has 2 very good trophies in his cabinet. He could literally retire any day now. The man started in the lower leagues of Italian football and worked his way up. On paper, he's the kind of manager you would expect to earn such a big job. And then you have Pirlo, who literally walks in and gets the job from Agnelli. I think to Juventus fans, it must be very frustrating watching a team just falter so badly. Not just because of the manager, but because of the names they have on their team sheet every week, because of players they would have rather have kept in the team, players they want to start who are being corroded like Dybala, who went from scoring 22 goals a season to scoring 5. And last night when he came on, Juventus hadn't even managed a shot on goal for the first 18 minutes of the game. Dybala managed 2 in the last 10 minutes. It just goes to show that there is something wrong at the club internally. And now, after all they've been doing, all of their bad decisions, the biggest one, obviously, was the fact that they wanted to join the Super League, and they're still a part of the Super League up until this point, mind you. Serie A are threatening to kick them out of the league because they haven't left the Super League yet. I think this is the cherry on the cake for every Juve fan. This is like the peak of bad decisions. Like, okay, we're screwed. We're genuinely screwed now. Our team is in decline. Our administration doesn't know what it's doing. Our president has no idea what he's doing. We're in a Super League competition we don't want to be a part of, and we might get kicked out of the league. What do we do now? This must be on every single Juventini's mind. We are currently in a state of chaos and disarray without anyone to see us through, without a vision. Just because we've been winning for so long, the administration decides to take all of that for granted, decides to take our history as a club for granted, decides to take everything we have ever done and how hard we've worked to get it all for granted. It is an insult to one of the biggest fan bases in Europe and the world. And mind you, after the whole Super League incident, when Woodward when he left Manchester United, it was just, he knew he was done. And the fans knew he was done. They would never forgive him for it. It's safe to say that it was also said, mind you, that Agnelli had left the club afterwards, but then the statement was retracted. It is safe to say that Juve and its fans just don't feel all that good about Agnelli. Granted, I don't know how Madrid feel about Perez. Let's just put that on the side for a second, for context's sake. But I don't know how Juventus fans are handling it, still just knowing that Agnelli is making the decisions. And oh, the poetic justice. It was so poetic to watch Antonio Conte, the man who started Juve's reign of dominance, be the one to end it at Inter. That was perhaps one of the most storybook coincidences I've seen in football today, or in any day. And granted, Inter earned this Scudetto. With a manager like Conte, they were going to win it sooner or later. I think the weirdest thing about Juve right now is the fact that their fans are literally up in the air. Figuratively. But literally in the sense that as fans of this club, existentially speaking, those who wear the black and white jersey with so much pride for their club, they're just wondering what is happening right now. I mean, granted, their situation financially isn't as bad as Barcelona's or Madrid's, for as far as I know. If I am wrong, please correct me in the comments below. It's just worth noting that people love to talk about how we need owners, we need businessmen, we need money at the club. Let's have a wealthy owner buy us out. He has enough money. He'll know what to do. He'll know who to buy. He'll know how to handle this club. I think it's fair to say that after everything we've seen in England, it is not just about an owner who has money. It is not just about a president who has money. It's someone who loves the club, someone who respects the institution, who has an eye for footballing business, who understands that just because he wears a suit and tie and sits behind a desk in a board of directors room at a football club, that he doesn't get jack. He doesn't have a passion for the sport. He doesn't bleed for the sport. He's not the one who puts the kit on, puts the shoes on, goes out every week for 90 minutes to play in front of thousands of fans who have to save up to buy tickets. Football is the fans' game. It always will be. It doesn't belong to businessmen. And if there is a rarity that businessman truly does get football, then by all means, go ahead. You'll know what to do. If you care about this club, you'll know what to do. People talk about good managers and bad managers. And people talk about, for example, Pep Guardiola at Manchester City. The perfect example I can give you is Man City. Look at what Sheikh Mansour bin Zayed has done at Man City. Brilliantly run club. It is a brilliantly run club. They buy the players that are needed. They back the manager as needed. They give him the funds that he asks for. He buys the players. He manages to... The club sells itself well to these players. And it is run perfectly from the ground up. Otherwise, they would not have been this successful. They wouldn't have been able to renew themselves. Bayern Munich. I think Bayern Munich are the best example of a properly run football club because of the 50+1 rule that has been active in Germany since 1994 up until this point. They have a brilliant owner. The fans have a say in the club's actions, in the club's decision making. And they're champions. Granted, I don't approve of the prolonged dominance that they have in the Bundesliga. Look at Bayern. Look at City. And look at Juventus. Just because you have a good team of players on the pitch, on paper, does not mean that you are one, and that does not mean that you can sustain it. People take the one thing that they shouldn't for granted when it comes to sport, when it comes to work, and that is consistency. There is nothing in football more important than consistency. If you want to be champions, it's not about beating the big teams. It's about beating every single team that crosses your path. Look at Leeds United and Marcelo Bielsa. And this is in no way a shot at that team. Just clearing that up. They have a perfect record at home at Elland Road against the Big Six in the Premier League. But look at where they are in the table. That is because of the results that they have gathered against every other team in the league. You do not focus on beating the bigger teams. You don't focus on beating the smaller ones either. You go into every game believing that you're going to win it. You go into every game organized, tactically, mentally, and prepared physically. That's what the manager's job is, and that's what the players' jobs are. And then the medical staff and what have you. But if those are being prepared and done and handled properly, and you have a horrid administration that has no vision for the club going forward, the club falls. People look at how football used to be back in the 70s and 80s and how it wasn't industrialized. And And in my opinion, at least nowadays, I'm starting to think that if you bring in the right kind of owners to every single club, people who genuinely care and have the funds and know exactly how to spend it, people who can listen to the fans, then football will be just as it was back then. It'll be a balance between fan-owned and industrialized. And I think that's how the game should move forward. But I don't think that's going to happen. And I think Juventus is a good example of how that's failing. Because they aren't listening to their fans. They're just following... They're following nothing. They don't have a plan. It is a club built on history. They're just resting on that history now. They're taking everything for granted and they're resting on their history. The administration, not the fans. The fans are irate. And currently in the summer transfer market, I am sure that Juventus' name will still ring out and that they'll still be able to attract players. But if they keep this level of inconsistency for long enough, their brand will fall. Look at Milan. Look at the differences in owners. Look at the different owners that they have had throughout the past decade. Look at how Inter and Milan both became irrelevant. And that's what it is. These clubs are more than just coaches and players. They are institutions built from the ground up that serve their community and they serve their countries. It's not just about needing good people on the pitch or in the boardroom. It's about both. It is about a balance. It is about communication, dedication. Juve have had that for the longest time. And I think at one point they were just riding their luck, to be fair. But at this point in time, they need that reorganization and restructure more than ever. And to be fair, I doubt that'll happen. If it were up to me, Agnelli should resign. And they should really just start changing things. They should change things the way Chelsea have, for example. Chelsea have now allowed fan representatives to attend club board meetings. I think it is crucial for fans to be heard at this point in time for Juve, so that they can actually bounce back ahead of next season. Now, I don't even know if Pirlo's still going to be managing them. Sarri was managing last season, and mind you, he was sacked despite the club confirming a couple of days prior that they would still go on with him, that he would remain at the club. He wasn't worried. The PR department they did a really good job with it, with showing us that the club in and of itself wasn't worried about the situation. But they still fired him. And he's still without a job. Now, I don't know what his appeal is, but I doubt he'll be back at Juve anytime soon, if not ever. And here's the real kicker. Juve have been linked with Allegri again. And the fans are thrilled. So many people wanted him to leave the club. And now look at them. They're begging to have him back. And I can't blame them. I would too. I genuinely would as well. The idea of him going back to Juventus actually excites me. I mean, for the league's brand as well. It's a shame. It's a real shame. And club officials usually wake up to the shame long after it's too late. Juve were languishing before this era of dominance. They were ending season 6th and 7th place. They were playing Europa League football. I still remember Juve's game against Lech Poznan in the Europa League round of... No, it wasn't round of 16. It was the group stages. And it was the 2010-2011 season. I think they had just bought Krasic. Del Piero was still playing up front. He scored the third goal in a 3-3 draw, and Juve had already fallen behind 3-2. Del Piero's strike was quite memorable for me. But when I look back at that period of time, at the year prior, at that loss to Fulham that I had mentioned earlier, you just think the club was in such bad shape. And it was sad. Even before then, they suffered a drubbing at Bayern Munich in the Champions League a year earlier. I don't know how this is going to improve. I don't know what it means to have a club of that stature with an owner who just does not want to make the right decisions. And the thing is, ironically, it falls on his head at the end of the day. People end up disliking him, having a distaste for him, for his decisions, because of their love for their clubs. Look at Arsenal and Kroenke. Look at how Arsenal fans have been driven mad. If you watch AFTV, Arsenal Fan TV, dear Lord, the content that they've been pushing. Oh my Lord. It has been hilariously sad. It's been a comedic tragedy of sorts. Oh my days, as they would say. And I, as a Chelsea fan, I'm sad for Arsenal, although I should be happy about this. But you grow and you learn that you are only as good as your rivals, as your competitors. You want your competitors to be better, because when your competition is better, football becomes better. When there is competition, football becomes better. It is all for the sport at the end of the day. And if you can't see the big picture, then I advise you not to watch. Because if you don't acknowledge it, then you don't love the sport as you say you do. For me personally, it's become an act of just looking at clubs that I may dislike and seeing how badly run they are. And looking at clubs that I like and seeing the same thing. It just makes me sad either way. Looking at Manchester United and seeing how badly they were run for the longest time, up until this point, and how the fans just can't stand the Glazers anymore. If not for Ole and the team, then they'd probably have waited a lot less to do what they did at Old Trafford. And then they were criticized by Sky Sports, who were criticizing the Super League a week earlier because of businessmen. Here's the thing. They're both bad. Anyone on the other end of the spectrum from us, the fans, for the most part, they don't want what's best for us. They want what's best for their pockets. And everything that has happened in Italy to Juve, Milan, obviously Juve, it's not that bad yet. Hopefully it won't get that far. Milan and Inter and Roma, who are in decline and have been for a while, who were playing Champions League football the decade before last. What is this? This is not the Serie A that I grew up watching. The sheer excitement of Italian football. The brand that was Italian football. The past decade, granted, because of Juve's dominance, at certain points, sure, it was fun to watch. But it wasn't competitive. And everything else just fell apart. None of the teams that were playing none of the bigger teams, apart from Juve, that were playing in Italy, could draw in players. It was bad for the brand of the league in and of itself. And look at how it was before that. And how much better it was, how much more competitive, how the red and black meant something, how the blue and black meant something, how the red of Roma meant something. It's a damn shame. It's sad. And I'm not necessarily sure what fans can do to change it. I don't think talk does much. I don't think anything that these people can say behind closed doors is going to do much to change the outlook of the people who care. But I do know one thing. Talk is cheap. And I think for everything the people behind closed doors don't do, they should be penalized. I don't know where Juve is going to go from here. But hopefully it'll be better for football overall. Better for Italian football. And hopefully Serie A can just regain its prominence. They're obviously on their way to rebuilding the league's reputation. People should want to go play in Italy. People should care about Milan, not just because it's history. For either club, I mean the city of Milan, not just because of either team's history, but because of the present, because of what they can look forward to. Because no one who's ever rested on their laurels has gotten anywhere. And that's it for today's episode. Thank you all for tuning in. Apologies for the couple of mistakes that I made while talking. This is getting better and better for me the more I do this. Obviously, the whole podcast video thing. If you don't follow us on social media, all of the links to our accounts will be listed below. If you have any questions or any comments on anything I've said, if you'd like to correct me on anything that I may be wrong about, please do so in the comments below. Thank you all for tuning in, and I will see you next time the whistle blows.